the last day.
Nurse moving outfit. Went away to 5 years now.
Oh, we never got locked in. Yeah, we're mostly locked out. We used to be locked out, not locked in.
That was the main floor.
And we worked at it.
Head there and so much. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my son, I
Jill.
can't
Who's next?
Oh, what do I do?
Go on the
Wait
bus.
on, wait on. I'll give her my phone and you can give her the instruction.
Edge will be on with you.
Hello.
Here you go.
Good.
What a bloody yeah. Security contact.
Yeah.
Hey, wait for me.
I probably can't believe. Shouldn't have seen the blonde over there. Couldn't have said that for a while, they wouldn't do it. Quick, get the other side of
Yeah. Get on the other side for it.
So no, it was.
Good on you, yeah. And that was it. And we went over the PART2.
Invitation to come along tonight and join us in the closing of the South and Frozen Meat Makarewa Works. It's lovely to see so many people here, and I assure you that you'll all be able to enjoy yourself tonight and tomorrow. I'd like you to stand for a moment's silence for those people that can't be with us. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would now ask Mr. Sam Walters to come up and say a few words on behalf of our committee. Thank you, Sam.
Te pō, te ao te pō. Kia mātou, tēnei wāhi e te pō ne, i ngā tātou tūpune no mai roto i te kāinga o te pō. Takoto mai, takoto mai, takoto mai. Kia koutou e haere mai ki te tautoko i tēnei hui e te pō, haere mai koutou, haere mai koutou, haere mai koutou, i runga te rāngi Māori o tātou tūpuna me tātou matua. Kia ora mai ana tātou. I'd just like to welcome you all here. I just said a little speech in Mary for all the other workers that have passed away, and I know that they're here in spirit tonight amongst us. And we all know there's a lot of our workmates that passed away, and I'm sure they would have been here with us tonight for this ceremony. Because I know we're still talking about the good old days when everything was going and they were here with us in them days, and they'll be here with us tonight. So as the night progresses along, I hope you all enjoy yourselves and have a good evening, and we'll have another good day tomorrow, Sunday, and Murray will tell you where it is later on. To all our visitors and all the ones that come from a long way, thank you for coming. It was not the committee that called you back, it was the Makarewa Freezing Works that called you back. We're only part of the team. We're like you. We were workers and we're still working. But we got no union, we got no bosses or no nothing. We're on our own. We started with nothing, and we're going to go out of here with nothing when we leave. So there'll be no traces of anything left. We're going to be like the works. We'll be just a memory as time goes by. So tonight, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of my committee, and as the night progresses, things will get a bit merrier and merrier, and we'll have a good night. So, to you as all, the whole lot of yous, thank you and welcome. Kia ora.
If you just sit at your tables, soup will be served to the tables. Thank you. Oh, no.
Getting up to speak again.
Yeah, okay, I just got tapped on the shoulder before to say I should say something, so I thought, I don't know what is in my head at the moment, but I'll share what I can with you. But anyway, just thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. I really enjoyed the trip around today. I wish I had been on that trip some years ago. I would have learned how to get sweetbreads and how to borrow meat, and I heard many honest truths today that would have helped me in my role. But I'd just like to say that I've been in the industry now 42 years, in the meat industry, and now I'm in the North Island. And it's quite funny, I was up talking to my team the other day, so I'm going back down to Makarewa for the weekend with my good friends down there, and they said, oh, down in Invercargill, it must be cold down there. And I said, yeah, it is. And they said, they must save a lot of money. They can open all the freezers and if they know freezing in the off-season. And that's what a lot of them think up there, there's that cold that you can freeze meat outside in Southland. And then I was explaining the size of the Makarewa works, and I always talk about this there, and I think Lotties can relate to this, that in Makarewa there's that big slaughterboard, and there used to be 600 men. And there was no ladies at all in Makarewa at the time I was there anyway, with his chase. And there was 600 men in one room, and 48 lambs a minute coming at the end. And when you tell people that they've ever been there, they just don't believe that's possible. But it was true. And the great thing about Makarewa was I could walk around those chains and talk to people, and I never got a bit of blood or a bit of thing thrown at me, even though I was that bee boss. So I really appreciated that. But anyway, I'd just like to say that out of the 8 works that I've managed throughout New Zealand, the 4 years I had at Makarewa were the highlight of my life. I've always enjoyed working with you people. I had the privilege to come here, and I certainly enjoyed every moment of it. So I quite often talk about the Makarewa people, how good they were to me, and how much I enjoyed working with you. So all I like to say is I'm still in the industry. I've still got 6 years to go. So I'm looking forward to retirement, but not really, because the industry is full of people, and that's what it is, and I love that. So all I want to say is thanks very much for putting the show on for the organisers of the reunion. I think it's a great idea, and I'm certainly proud to be here. And all I want to say to you all is wish you well in the future, and I'm just happy to be back here in Invercargill. So thanks very much.
Had a apology to put in from Scruffy Butt. Barry Brethren and I went to see him yesterday. He's in great heart. He said he'd visited the cemetery yesterday and was talking to a couple of his cobbers over there, and they said there's no room for you here yet. So Scruffy is thinking of you all. He'd love to have been here, but sorry, his health just wasn't quite good enough to make it. So that's what he said.
Make a fool of myself sometimes. Anyway, I feel very honoured to be asked to say a few words here tonight to you people, because it's a long time since I've been in the works, and but I do have some very pleasant memories of what it was like then. Just to go through a couple of things, the unity of everybody in the works, especially with the sports team that I was associated with. There was various factions that made up that sports team: the management, the workers, the tradesmen, meat inspectors, but they all had one common thing, and that was sport, and that overcame any differences they might have had together. So I was very proud to be part of that. The way that things were funded in those things was a tribute to the Frisian workers too, because everyone put into those things. I think the sports fund was managed by a 5-cent levy. Everybody put in 5 cents a day into that thing, and everyone done it, and the accountability of that money made it carry on year after year, and that was an important thing. And those sports teams proved it over the years, how they won everything at those sports tournaments, and I was very proud of that. There was a few names that came up in those sports teams that everyone will probably know about too. The rugby was a big sport, of course, and Frank Oliver became an All Black, and he was represented the Makarewa Frisian Works in those days before he became an All Black. I remember the pull in those sports tournaments was one of the most intense individual competitions in that tournament. And Nicky Brown, I think he might be here tonight, won I think at least a couple of times and was placed right up in the top echelon in that sport, because there wasn't a Frisian Works in the country that couldn't boast a couple of very good pool players, and it wasn't a reflection on their upbringing, as the saying goes, either. But the way that money was accounted for too was a big important thing, and the committees I was associated with in handling those funds and other funds around the works was a credit to the way that they handled it, and it was important that that happened. That's about all I can think of. Other things in the union, there was various jokers that I knew of that were, I just think, deserve a mention. And one of the ones was Percy Bulling. He had a dry wit, that fella, and he was one of my sports founders of the tug of war, and we respected him very much. And there was a fella called Curly Thomas who used to make himself known a bit around the place too, and I respected his judgment a fair bit. What else was I thinking of? I can't think of any more. But thanks for hearing me out anyway, and hope you all have a good night. Thanks very much.
Just in getting people together tonight, it's not an easy job, and there's certainly a good muster of people that we haven't seen for a long time. It seemed to me, I was thinking about it this morning, that the only people that really let us down were the locals. All the out-of-towners seem to be here, but there's a lot of locals that are missing, and that's unfortunate. But it's like anything, if you don't turn up, then you don't enjoy the fun. So that's it. I just want to, first of all, Mr. Chairman, touch on the Intersports just for a brief second, because one of the things that I was asked if I could obtain to put on display here was the Paianga Shield, which was the ultimate prize in the Meat Workers Intersports competition. And to get that down here, I visited Rangi Paianga, who was the founder and Mr. Meat Workers Intersports, I suppose. And when I went into his house, he thought I came for a friendly visit. He didn't know I come in there to take his precious shield from above his mantelpiece. But Rangi's a very, very pleasant gentleman, and he's done all his life in Gisborne. He was a secretary of the Kaiti Works, the president of the East Coast branch of the New Zealand Meat Workers Union, and the president of the New Zealand Meat Workers Union. And Rangi was very happy to let the shield come here. In fact, he agreed to come down and say a few words, and in a way we're perhaps lucky he didn't, because last time Rangi spoke at Makarewa, he spoke for 1 hour 45 minutes in an election campaign. But at the very last minute he had some personal business to attend to and he couldn't come. But for all of that, he sent the shield down on the very promise that I take the shield back to him, and he rang me on Monday and said, would I pass on his best wishes to the people at Makarewa. He's forgiven them that they voted for Roger Middlemas and not him when he stood for National President. And he asked me to say that he fought for 2 or 3 years to get that Intersports underway. He got the idea from the Wharfies, who have a sports tournament and still have one every year, and he presented it to conference for 3 years, a proposal to get the tournament underway, and in 1973 the conference agreed to it. I thought Rangi, he's not young, I thought he might be wrong, so I checked the minutes and he was dead right. But he got the shield underway, or the sports underway, and he'd had a son that was killed in Vietnam in service, and he presented that trophy in honour or memory of his son. So we were lucky to get it down here tonight, and promised I'll take it back to him sometime in the future, and I'll make sure that I do. So I just wonder what when you come to something like this. I'm pretty young in the meat industry, and I spent 33 years at Makarewa, which seems a long time, but when you look at some of the people that I've met around here today, it's not a long time, and a lot of them were there long before me. I probably got to know about Makarewa through an old mate of mine that I went to school with called Ray Wood, and he was a meat grader or something out there, and he introduced me first of all to the Cleaver boys at Colac Bay, because they wanted someone on the deep end of the flounder net, and I was the silliest one, so I ended up with that. And then a few years later, I moved into sort of the D Street area of Invercargill, and I used to call into the Avenel Hotel, and there was a fella in there called Rex Boyd, Sexy Rexy we used to call him, and he worked at Makarewa for many years, and between him and the people calling in at Makarewa, they convinced me that I should leave Ocean Beach. And that was long before there was seaweeds at Ocean Beach, if anyone's thinking about that. And go to Makarewa. And while I thought about it, I remember on the back of the hoofbeats, I think it said, the door that opens to your security. And we were broke in the pub most of the time, so we needed that security. So off to Makarewa I went, 1969. And I used to start it off by travelling to work with Clive Russell and his old vanguard. There was Bertie Dyack, Clive, myself, and George Harrison, Blind George. I was just remembering with Clive tonight, we're coming, George used to, every night on the way home, he lived in a flat in D Street, he used to get out of the car, walk around, put his hand in the letterbox and feel in the letterbox to see if there was any letters in it. And he used to do that every night. So one night Bertie jumped out and put his hand in the front of the letterbox. George put his hand in, felt the hand. That was the end of him. He never went back to that letterbox again. 3 years we travelled with him. He never looked in there for any letters. So, poor old George. Anyway, I started off on the pelting block on number 4 chain, and all the boys cut me up, including Angie McIntosh. He said, I think he was right, he said it's the only asylum that's run by the lunatics, this place. So, I wasn't much cop at pelting, but I was pretty good at talking, so I thought if I can get into this delegates job, they had a lot of delegates meetings. So that was me. Took me a couple of years to do that. There was a lot of good guys, and when they had a delegates election on the slaughter board, there was a lot of people stood. And you had to be pretty sharp to get up there. It took me 2 or 3 years to get it. But once I got in there, I thought, this is it. What we got to do now is we got to keep going. We got to keep these delegates meeting going as long as we can. Easy in the pelting block, and there was plenty of guys there to help you. We had about 6 delegates. First of all, you had to learn to become a sniffer. There were some bad smells around that place, the meatworks, and we had a smell dispute. Went on for a long time. I suppose I qualified, not too bad in the honker. Me and Davey Holloway, he taught me where the holes they'd come through and the cracks and different things. So if we couldn't get a bit of time off with the smell, it might get too hot. Got a new machine called a whirling hygrometer. You whirl it round, well above the hot spots of course, and when it got to 30 degrees you went home with something like that or down at the pub. We had a slaughterman shindig to organise every year, and there was Granny Baker had to get the supper ready, Maxie Beaton, Wally Hayrick had to go away and get the coal for Granny's fire, and there was a lot of organising to do for it. It took half the season if we could get away with it. And then we used to after we finished at the Green or after work, if we didn't go down at dinner time and we got down there at night time, we used to scheme about how we could get the next delegates meeting the next day and what we could talk about at it, so we didn't have to pull them bloody skins off again. So it was pretty good stuff, but they were good works. It was they were good people, and the workers would back you, and the people had some good ideas, and we had some good ideas as well. And then I stood for a shared officials position there. I always remember it because when I got elected, my old mate Spud Burns, he used to keep a diary in his hut, and I must have been out of sorts with him at the time because I sneaked into his hut when he wasn't there, and written in his diary was, "Bart must have got the president's job, he's wearing new boots." So sometimes when you're in the union game, you're either popular or you're not, and at that time I obviously wasn't popular with Spud. But at any rate, some people I'm still not popular with, but that's the way it goes. So it was a bit, I term it a bit like a family, Makarewa, and it's a shame nowadays that meat companies don't operate the same, but if you had a son, you wanted to go to the works, you got a job there. There was fathers, sons, relations, your mates, they all got jobs there. Horse trainers and jockeys, well, they were automatic, they just went straight through. And good rugby players. If you could play rugby, didn't matter if you'd never seen a chain before, you never went on the learner's chain, straight on to tally. There'd be enough guys there to cut you up, particularly for the works rugby season. I don't know what happened if you didn't play too good. I suppose they stopped the cut-ups, but they were definitely in. But, you know, they were the good times, and today they don't do that. The bosses, to be fair, in those days weren't too bad, and most of them had worked on the chain and worked in the various departments and done the jobs. Now they try and bring in a lot of young fellas that they don't know too much about the meat industry, but they like being bosses, and it just doesn't work the same in my opinion. But that's another story. But anyway, all good things come to an end. We got Hallel slaughtering at Makarewa, out went the pigs, and it wasn't long after that the beef got a bit shaky. Next thing, it's gone. We had 6 chains, then we were down to 2, back to 3, brought in a bit of venison, and in the end of it, we came to the end where the mutton and lamb was disappeared. And in the meantime, of course, the camp had closed, and that to me was one of the hearts of Makarewa. There was all sorts of things went on in that camp. Yeah, 2-ups and drinking, and certainly if you felt a bit crook in the morning and you had a mate in the camp, you could leave home and bye-bye dear, and shoot down the camp and jump into his bed when he got out of it, and get up at lunchtime and go down, have a few beers, and go home at 5 o'clock and say, shit, it was hard today. and they had a whole heap of people. They had 400 slaughtermen on the board once because it was about 70 or 80 away. Jeez, I'd hate to see what happens today when there's that many away. You take half an hour off nowadays and they want to sack you. They never sacked anyone at Makarewa. First guy I remember them ever sacking when I was there was Turkey Bar, and he deserved to be bloody. He got back again. But anyway, I found out, apart from the fact that it's easier not being on the pelting block, I found out also that if you're a union secretary, it's probably much safer than being a manager, because in the time I was there was Ozzie Crawford, Alistair Blue, Dennis Butler, Ron Barron, Trevor Johnson. John Tate came, went, came again, went, came again. And then they brought a bloody beauty up from Ocean Beach. John Wilson, with a whole lot of people with him, who got some name, Seaweeds or something like that. And if I was a singer, I could sing you the song. But he didn't last that long, thank goodness. Finally, they done it. They brought in a woman. Sorry about that. Judith Meyer arrived there, and that fixed it. It was the last bastion of male chauvinism, Makarewa. We were the last works in New Zealand to have women employed in them. And in come Judith, and the works finally closed. I got to say, in fairness, it wasn't her fault, actually. It wasn't her fault. She was assisted by the fact that, you know, the land population halved, at any rate, during her time. So I was lucky enough to still be there at the end and a wee bit after it, and I had to hang around for a wee while because someone suggested that I could become secretary of the New Zealand Meat Workers Union. So I hung about there for a few months picking up cartons and stacking cartons, and it eventuated that I did get the General Secretary's job, and it's still what I do. And so I travel around all of New Zealand mainly, but mainly the bottom half of the North Island and all of the South Island. And when I started in the first year, I used to say to people, I come from Makarewa, blah, blah, and at the end of a meeting, some guy would come up to me and said, I worked at Makarewa in 1950, or I worked somewhere. One young fella came up and said, my grandfather worked at Makarewa, and I think he was a union secretary. So I rang up Clarkey, because Clarkey doesn't drink, so he's got a lot better memory than me. And he said, yep, Bill Watson, I know him, I remember him coming around. So I was able to write to that young fellow and tell him, yes, here's your father, he did work there, he was the union secretary, so it's good. Makarewa, I say, is held in the highest regard all over New Zealand by meat workers, and even in Australia. In September last year, I went to Brisbane and addressed the Australian Meat Industry Employers Union Conference. And I said to them a bit of history. I said, I know a few Australians, the House, the Lout, Nana Day, quite a few Aussies. And I said, we've sent some of our fellas over there as well, like Luke and Tricky Dick. And after the meeting, a bloke came up to me, and he was a delegate from Victoria. He said, I know two of those bloody blokes, and I know Luke Fahey, and I know this other guy. So Makarewa spreads itself not only around New Zealand, but around Australia. So there's no doubt about it, in my opinion. Makarewa was the best. I was lucky that old Rexy and different people talked me into going there, and I really enjoyed the time that I spent there. And I've got one last bit of good news for anyone that's interested in unionism. I think the meat industry's been going for over 100 years in New Zealand, and once upon a time, about 1900 and something, just before Trevor Johnson was born, they had a meat union federation, but they've never ever had one meat workers union in New Zealand. There's always been the New Zealand Meat Workers Union, the Auckland Meat Workers Union, or the Auckland Timona Meat Workers Union. You're the first people to know it. We only need a few people to vote for it, but it's pretty set in concrete. By the 1st of October of this year, the North Island Union, which is called Meat Union Aotearoa, is going to join the New Zealand Meat Workers Union, and we'll have, for the first time in history, one meat workers union in New Zealand, the New Zealand Meat Workers Union, and that'll be, in my opinion, one of the best things that ever happened. And we might shake some of these cobwebs on some of the bureaucratics and university softies that have never been in the industry up when we do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I think it looks as though our meal is just about ready down there, so if you just take turns at tables, don't all rush at once, because they'll never handle us. So if you just go like lambs, you'll get fed purple. Thank you.
I'm going to read you a wee poem about it called Ode to Makarewa, but when I was at high school, the careers advisor came round and he said, interviewing all us, and of course I never went down a class because I was in the bottom one. But anyway, he said, come my turn for an interview, and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I've got 3 things in mind, and of course, all of them wanted to be bloody lawyers and accountants and bloody pen pushers, and I said, I'm either going to be a shearer, a wolfie, or a meat worker. And he was sort of aghast, and he said, why is that? And I said, well, it's the only job I know you need a weak head and a strong back, and I've got both of them. So anyway, I left school at 15 and was working for the old man, and Johnny Joseph used to come over. He I said I was going to Makarewa, and he said, look Ken, say you're 18, lie about your age. So I did that, and I went to Makarewa, and I worked there, but I told a couple of funny stories though, but my last one was certainly Dave Eastlake and I were talking about it, and it was during a big union meeting, and we were raising money for the Lawnville old people's home, and they wanted hydraulic beds, and there was a row going on because some money was supposed to be sent to the Strongman mine disaster, and it wasn't. It. Old Red Harper and Spud Burns were going sour about it, but anyway, and there was one guy got up and said his wife worked there and they had one hydraulic bed, and he said, oh, it's very helpful for all the people, and you know, if we put this money in it, anyway. And then there was another guy got up and said, his 18-year-old daughter was at varsity, and he said, and every night she came home tired and had a sore back. And before he said any more, a joke out, she been shagging. Well, there was a bloody uproar, but anyway, I'll read you this ode to Makarewa. I'm not a poet, I know it, but I wrote this out this afternoon. And my thanks goes to May Evans for helping me type it. I'm proud to say I worked at Makarewa 27 wonderful years in all. Some tales I'd like to tell you, some long, some short, some tall. It was a mighty meatworks, that it was for sure. I met some hard case characters there, but sadly it is no more. Into the boning room I went, a mere lad of 16, watching them bone our beef, a sight I'd never seen. It wasn't long before a voice called out, pick up your knife, said Digger Giles. Don't stand there like a loner. Step right up beside me, boy. I'll show you how to be a boner. Down to the slaughter board sometimes I would go to watch Jimmy Wells put on one of his funny shows. 6 chains would stop to see this. Poor Snow McClay and Horse Feather would be pulling their hair out in yanks. It said, bloody Wells again, they'd cry out, up to his silly pranks. The daisy chain, a broom balanced on his head, he kept everyone on their toes, balancing 6 knives upon his nose. When there was a stoppage, down to the bull ring we would stroll, to listen to the union officials tell us, accept the company's offer, go on strike, or leave altogether and go on the dole. Martin, Cameron, Bulling, Dawson, Bryce, Anderson and Ryan, they'd always try their very best and never give up trying. Hill, Simmons, Fahey, Eastlake and Ox Haynes, Nicholson, Walker and old crafty Eddie Gaines. Yes, I'm proud to be a union man and never forgot their call. United we all stand, divided we all fall. And often in the 60s, before a meeting start, 2 pennies flew in the air. To play 2 up, you had to have some nerve and a strong heart. The game would hold you in suspense, because in those good old days, you played for pounds, shillings and pence. Step right in the ring would roar a throaty shout. Just remember, the more money you put in, the more you will take out. The manager of the works, most of us knew so well, how they put up with some of the troubles and shit, because sometimes we made their life just hell. Some good, some bad, some great, but 4 stand out above the rest. They had what it takes. True gentlemen they surely were. Ozzie Crawford, Ron Barron, Trevor Johnson and John Tate. Firm but fair and never one to hate. If you had a problem, they'd greet you with a smile. They would go out of their way to help you and go that extra mile. But alas, in the 80s, I could read the coming signs. Rationalisation was taking place in the industry. Makarewa was in decline. With heavy heart and a great stride I had to take, it was the year of '88. I picked up my knives and said goodbye and walked out the gate. But the skills I learned at Makarewa have stood by me and stood the test of time. Now boning out Blue Sky Way, and sometimes I put down my knife and think of Makarewa, where I spent some of the best years of my life. It was bloody hard work, but we all put ourselves to the test. I'm proud to be a Makarewa man, and the people I met there were the very best. Now the curtain's down on Makarewa from 1912 to 99, and sadly it will not last. Like Islington and Burnside and the beach, now Makarewa is an icon of the past. And someday when I get to the pearly gates, St. Peter will hopefully greet me with the score. Step right in, you old Makarewa man. I know you by your smell. Welcome into heaven, boy, because you've had your share of hell.
Sam and his committee for having us all together here. There's a lot of people I don't know, most of you don't know who I am either, but we were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and the Makarewa Freezing Works, in my eyes, was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. And we go around the funerals now and you see the old guys, I'm calling myself some of the old guys. We are last, my generation is the last of the old generation, returned soldiers who went and fought the war, you know, and we were lucky to have these guys to help us. They nurtured us and brought us through as trade unionists. I'd like to mention what he's already mentioned, Percy Bulling. I just want to just say something about Percy. Angel Ivanhoff, he was a Bulgarian. He was at the time, most likely some of you will know, but Angel would always challenge Percy for pulling the lazy stick. And Percy he's only a wee fella, nuggety, tough little fella, and he used to beat him every time. So, you know, in those days we had, you know, it was great fun. But I would like to sort of carry on a wee bit further. It saddens me and my old workmates to see what has become of Makarewa and the industry. I don't know what went wrong. We had the strongest union, perhaps in New Zealand. And we did have the strongest union in New Zealand. And through the years, it slipped by. They gave the conditions away which we fought for. They'll never get them back. And it's sad, but that's life, I suppose. Yeah, me too. And the days at Makarewa, folks, in the good old days, everybody here, young or old, would have really loved it. We weren't frightened of any bucket. We weren't frightened of the government, the bosses, anybody. We run the place. This is true. And we had good bosses, don't get me wrong, they were good guys. Ozzie Crawford and the old fella Bigwood and Momo was a good fella. Momo, my friend Sam said Momo, I'll tell you one story. Momo was a returned soldier of the 8th Army, and once a year, or perhaps once every 2 years, he would perhaps tell us a story, the punches, you know. Alistair Wright will know this. So the one that stuck in my mind the most was the 8th Army. They were in Egypt they'd just been fighting in the war. They were all here. So the Italians, the Arabs, you call them, what you had some other word for them, the Arabs, they used to put their foot under the tanks of the Kiwi tanks. And they would get in the hospital, and they would have to have they'd bring all their cousins, aunties and everybody, and the guy who drove the tank would have to pay for it. So this was mostly it wasn't going down too good. So one guy, he said, I'm not paying for nobody. So this guy, bad luck for him, he put his leg under the tank and blah, blah, blah. So the guy just put he just put it in reverse and run right over him. He said, I can still see it now. He said, his stomach coming out of his mouth. And he said, they didn't come near the Kiwis after that. The Yanks, they went with them because they were soft. So that's, you know, but there's one or two other stories. But you know, a young fellow growing up, returned soldier, old Teddy Hayes. He was another returned soldier. Good guys. And Joe Cannon, Jack Martin, Percy Bulling, who else? You know, we had a great upbringing in unionism, and it was great to be part of it. And the people who were part of it, it's hard to tell other people what a great feeling it was. And we had a great, how can I put it? Great understanding with each other. And in those days, it was really, really good. And there were good fellas, like, you know, we had, I can't remember anybody on drugs, smoking dope. No, I can't. I can't remember anybody. I can remember 3 communists, and they were quite open about it, that they were communists, and we didn't have any, the only problem in our time was the booze. And so we lived in a fortunate era, and we didn't have any of those problems at work at all. And yeah, so that's, what I'll tell you another story. Snowy McLean, he was our foreman, and Snow's here, and Snow was a good guy, and I used to give him Snowy. There's an old fella who used to go down and he was a returning soldier, and Snowy used to sack him about every second or third Monday morning. So I used to go and fight this guy and get his job back, and I said, look, this guy's a bloody returned soldier, Snow. What are you doing to him? He's went and fought for the country, and you guys were home here bloody getting it easy, doing nothing. And Snow wouldn't say nothing, and but Snow was always selling poppies. And if there's any returned soldier, silly me. Yeah, so he had everybody selling poppies. Is that better? But he used to sell poppies too. And he never said that to me. So Rex Boyd said to me once. He says, look, he said, I think Snow, you might be, judging him wrong, Graham. He said, yours calling Graham. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, he was a returned soldier, or he was in the Merchant Navy, which was bloody worse. Rex Boyd said to me. So I found out years and years later that Snowy was an ex-bloody man. And well, look, I tell you what, I've waited for years to tell him just how sorry I am. I saw him last night. I apologised to him. I apologise again now, because every now and again I used to think about it. I said, poor Bum Snowy. But to make the story a wee bit shorter, I'm finished then. So he said to me, you go down and get this guy out of the huts. Get him up here on Monday mornings. Wow, down I go. First Monday morning, this old guy just got climbed the bloody wall. So I said, be here by dinner time. So I said, if it happens again, look, so I go. So he says, go down again the next Monday morning. I said to him, hey, listen, I'm not coming down here again. You can deal with bloody Snowy McLean. He can sack you. So Snowy, thanks very much, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Talking about Frank Crichton, I think. There's a couple of things that I just want to make clear here. Dave Eastlake mentioned that we were chauvinists at Makarewa and we didn't have any women there, but we did have them, and Pat Tapuna over here was in the casings. Luke Fahey apologises because he can't be here tonight. Dave tells me he's taken a Blue Hatter's job in Melbourne, so he's got other responsibilities. It was good to see that we had a good balance today. We were half locked out and half locked in. I'm here to do the serious stuff tonight, and I just want to talk about the achievers that we had in the plant over the years, and this is why I've got such a list of names here, because I sat down this afternoon and wrote down as many as I could remember. No doubt I'll have missed some out, and no doubt I'll have some there that shouldn't be there. But we had people from everywhere in Southland. We had North Invercargill, South Invercargill, the Tautau, Colic Bay, the Sticks at Oropuki and wherever else, Winton, Wallacestown, Morris Bush, Woodlands. And we had these achievers that came from the plant. It wasn't anything to do with the plant, but they worked at the plant. So I just listed a few down here. In golf we had Jim Lapsley, who's still trying to earn his place on the veteran circuit in the golf. Dusty Miller won the left-handers Southland tournament I don't know how many times. In snooker, billiards and pool we had Trevor Clark, who was a billiards specialist. Doug Wood, snooker. Nicky Brown was mentioned before, and the Toad, Todd Wade. Cycling, Peter Robinson, Ron Giles, and Jackie Hackett, I see here tonight. Basketball, Malcolm Clark played for Southland. Squash, we had Sandy Mackay and John Cahoon, and one or two other self-proclaimed champions. Won't mention their names. Softball, Jamie Campbell and Russell Frisbee. Boxing, we had Dennis Hagen, Johnny Henderson and Johnny Lawrence, I'm sorry. Wrestling, we had Warren Hubber and Old Angel. Both of those, boxing and wrestling, we had Curly Thomas. I played rugby with Curly, and Curly wasn't ever sure whether he was boxing, wrestling or mauling or chasing the ball. But whatever he did it with a lot of gusto. He also trains racehorses, by the way. We had a New Zealand oyster opening champion in Mike Racy. We had dog obedience in Bill Patterson. We had bowlers like Bert Benfield, David Gray, Stu Dixon, Ron Barron, Phil Peters, Terry McCallum, Ray Carson, and it goes on. But it's already been mentioned before that we had lots of rugby players, and if you played rugby, you got a job at Makarewa. So we had Lester Rutledge and Frank Oliver, who were All Blacks, of course. We had Eddie Robinson, who had been claimed to be work for Makarewa because he did at the port on our behalf. We had Phil Butt and Brent Shepherd, who played each 100 games for Southland. We had other Southland reps like Norman Bennett, Barry Leonard, Bulldog Smith, Kevin Stevens, Paul Laidlaw, Bob Harrington, John Paulson, John Ellis, Alan Gordon, Hayden Martine, Iona Seeper. And there was a couple of guys in the beef house who I'm not sure, there was an O'Donnell and a Dermody down there, whether they were the ones that played for Southland or not. Then we had all those other rugby players that were just on the fringes of that. Curly Thomas's name is here again, so he's Bill Grice, Jody Brisbane, Morris Lake, Johnny Joseph, Doug Smith, Bevan Brown, a bunch of Cleavers, Clarkie Neal, Red Harper. We had some referees too, Guy Davis, Doug Drain and Rob Allen. So that's the rugby players that I was able to remember, and me of course. Michael Blakey's a good bowler as well. Racing, the thoroughbreds, we had a family of Ridleys. Leo Boyle, Brian and Kevin Cairns, Bobby Beck. I was tempted to put Alan Beck in there because I believe he was a jockey, but someone tried to convince me he wasn't. Kenny Burt, Dave Bart Eastlake, Morel Hillis, Monty Hillis, Johnny Surgeoner, Wayne Emerson, Jimmy, Johnny and Ronnie Crawford, Spud Tate and his two sons Alan and Melvin, I think they were, Henry Skinner. Henry Skinner was also involved with trotters. Standard breeds, I should say, I suppose. Jock and Brent McIntyre, Colin, Kevin and Vin Devery, Rob and Alan Beck, Ron and Gary McEwen, Richard and Tony Stevens, Don McRae Senior and Junior, Tony Heffernan, believe that, Neville Skinner, Alan and Brendan Scobie, Frank Sheridan, Andy Laidlaw, Bert Walters, Ian Mackay, Ron Barron and Curly Thomas. Curly Thomas is there again, for goodness sake. Then we had these people that were involved in all forms of racing and galloping. Jimmy Horn, Lou Bly, commonly called the Captain, Harold Shirley, Michael Hughes and Jack Earnshaw and the Roan Bull. No doubt there were others there that had a TAB account that was accessible to anyone that really wanted to bet on the day. Nicknames was mentioned before, and we had our share of Snowy and Bluey and Red and Spuds and Shorty and Curly and Baldy and Scotty. We had father and son, horse and pony, hurricane and cyclone. But wherever did we get these other nicknames from that's got me really confused? Underpants, I think I can follow. Billy Bargoo, have got no idea. I wish someone would enlighten me on that. I know who he was, but Billy Bargoo, for goodness sake. House, the Toad. He dubbed Nicky Boo. We had Groper. I think I can work that one out. Groper was the boy that accepted the challenge to sprint down the board with his belt and gum boots and nothing else. I think he was paid for that. The Arab makes you wonder. Fizzer, Kookaburra, Bobo, Joe Boot, Mungo Jerry, Mother, Granny, and Gumboot. And Gumboot's here tonight, and I just remember him playing fullback for Bluff. And so I used to call him Bluff. A few incidents over the years that have me a little bit puzzled. I'm not sure whether they're true or not. Well, one is I'm not sure whether Mick Yo was actually carted up the back stairs at 6 o'clock in the morning with a broken ankle. Hasn't been really confirmed, but the story about Snow McClay standing on the pelting block with his hands behind his back and must have been true. Jimmy Wells thought he'd have a bit of fun with him, and he did. I've got to tell you as well that when I was a young supervisor in the boning room, on Christmas Eve I went to the carton room downstairs, and here's 3 old fellas with a bottle of gin. I thought, shit, what the hell do I do about this? Christmas Eve, be magnanimous, give them a bollocking and go away and forget it. So I did. It was nothing to do with the fact that one of the old fellas there happened to be my father. And my ride to work. I think, in all seriousness, the Makarewa, somebody mentioned it before, we had a culture of unity and sort of welfare. And when you think about the 1984 floods and the tragedy at Colic Bay when the 3 boys were drowned out there, and we had 1 or 2 house fires and a few people down on the luck, the whole plant sort of got behind them, and we had their bucket collections and etc., and we all got behind them to help out. And there was the various picnic committees, sit committees, sports committees, and there was this unity thing. So if you faced adversity of any type, it didn't seem to be, it seemed to be logical, I think, that the whole plant got behind it. And when I mention adversity, I think of all the things that happened to us. And I still remember that bloody old pie warmer in the butcher's dining room. Sent us home for half a day or something. Real difficult stuff to deal with. However, I think Sam and his team have got to be congratulated on what they've done. This was an innovative idea, and it was well done, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I hope the rest of you are. And the music, I know it's all my type of toe-tapping music. So I'd like you to put your hands together for the committee here of Murray Brown, and thank you very much.
More music I'll ask Sam to come up, please, and just say a couple of words. Thank you, Sam. He's the chairman of our committee.
Yeah, thank you, Murray, and thank you, John. That was a real good speech, and to me and my committee, you are our #1 man. If it wasn't for you, I don't think we would have got started up. Because you were the first one to give the first donation to us, to start us off. So I thank you for that. I'll just say a few quick thank yous to all our sponsors and people that were involved in, and we'll get into this boogie stuff over here. To our Minister, Mickey Thompson, and your Karanga Kuia Fire, thank you very much, Mickey. We had a good choice on you, because to us, you were one of the oldest ones there amongst us to start us off on this reunion. So thank you, Mick. Very good. The Invercargill Workmen's Club management, bar staff and caterers for tonight's social, and all the way through the reunion, they were a choice to us, and they kept us right up with the play with everything to keep every one of you happy. So I thank them. And the ILT, Gary Muir, and the ILT, it's their turn tomorrow to host us. So there'll be some good times there too. So if you want to come up to the Glengarry tomorrow, you're most welcome to. If you don't, you want to carry on with your holiday, your Easter, it's all right with us too. The Alliance Group, and again our friend John Tate, thank you very much for the Alliance Group and their contribution to our reunion, and to Lou Dead. Radio sponsors, Classic Hits, More FM and 96.4, and to Chris Dyer. Chris was our main man on the air, and I think there's quite a few over the Southland area heard Chris and myself on the radio advertising this reunion. So thank you to Chris Dyer. The IPT, the drivers that took the people around today on the trail of where they used to, all the workers used to drink at and reminisce and hide away from the bosses when they come to get them. I thank the drivers from the IPT, and you're on in your band tonight. Thank you for being part of the reunion with us. I know we're going to have some good music. And to my Water Club, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have had any bus drivers. They forfeited their Easter to drive for the reunion, so thanks to our way. The White House, Green Roofs, Thornbury hotels that went round today, and the Makarewa Country Club, where they all supposed to have ended up, but one bus got lost. But never mind, they all had a good trip, so the ones that never went on it, you missed out on a good day's out. And to the ones that supplied all the photos, to my good friend Ray Taylor. If it wasn't for you, Ray, we wouldn't have had all those big photographs on the walls around in there. And to Roy Stiles, which we all know what happened to Roy. And you see on the back wall, all those photos were dedicated to Roy Stiles, and because he took all of them. So that was for the photos, and the Southland Times that come to advertise all the reunion, and they're coming back tomorrow to do more stories. To them, thanks very much. The Spirit of Southland for giving us all the packages and all that. They were good to us too. To Kevin Carson and your firm, thank you for letting us doing a lot of the photocopying. Without you, we would have been paying big bucks to get them done. And our First Lady that was on, that come up onto the board is Anne Watt. You were the first one to open the doors up on the board for the woman to come onto the slaughter board. So you're part of the history of this place. Because you were the first labourer ever to come up there as a female. There was a meat inspector, a woman there before you, but you were the first one in the workforce to come up along there. And the speakers of the night, to all of you that spoke tonight, thank you very, very much. I'm sorry, Dennis, I thought I had to get you, because you were the one that come around home to see me. So I thought I'll throw one back on you, mate. And to all the memorabilia, that people that brought photos and all the stuff to put up out here to help us, thank you very much. And I hope you know which photos you're taking back when they're pulled out. And to all our partners behind the scenes, the wives, and to you, Kevin, again. Thank you all for helping us. Without your fellow support behind us, I think we would have been doing a bit of a struggle here and there. So again to you, and to you, Pat, thank you very much, mate. So and to you again, John Tate, thank you very, very much, my man, on behalf of the committee too. So before I finish, I'd like to call my committee up. We've got one apologies for Tango. He had to go home, his wife is not very well. But as you know, Murray's here. Rich Fox, come up, mate. Ryan Taragi. Brother Harvey. Graham Weir. And the boss, Alison. And the last one of all, please John, come and join us. Thank you. So this is our committee, and on behalf of them, I'd like to thank you all and enjoy the rest of your weekend with us.
Oh, bloody beautiful.
Sam, I'd like to propose a toast to our committee. Everybody charge your glass up and stand up and have a toast. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you.
I'd have a drink, but I can't get to it. Yeah.